Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The typical greeting of Run It Back. Whatever you guys consume your media, thank you for joining in, taking a listen. Really appreciate it. This is Run It Back, and I am your host, Menelik Fernandez. The premise of the show, of course, remains the same, where we take a game that has happened previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about all the intricacies of the game. This week, we are taking a look at a game from November 24th, 2019. It's Rider versus Vermont. And we are most fortunate to have an assistant coach from this game join us, Coach Marlon Guild, who is someone that over the past year and a half, I have had the good fortune to listen and learn from and get to know and develop a relationship with. I've got tremendous respect for this gentleman. MG, give me a second and please let me try and do you some justice with a little bit of an introduction here. MG is actually, Marlon has just joined Binghamton's staff in June. So exciting new ventures coming up. Prior to that, spent 6 seasons at Rider, where he has had an NIT berth, an MAAC championship. Prior to that, he had 7 seasons at St. Peter's, where they made the tournament in 2011. He began his career at Eastern Connecticut State in 2007, and prior to that was doing recruitment analysis for Rivals.com for 2 years and was a consultant for ESPN for 4 years. That was not prior, that was actually during, excuse me. And, you know, just somebody who's experienced tremendous success and is very well respected in the community. So I'm very, very happy and consider myself fortunate to be able to sit down and run it back with you. Welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you on, sir.
No, appreciate you having me. I've had a chance to watch a few of these, and I enjoy it. I think we're all students of the game, right? So anytime you can get on it and learn something, it's always some good stuff. So happy to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate that. And one thing I'm going to say as an aside is for anybody who knows MG and knows that he is tremendous at sharing. And, you know, he'll hit you up randomly and be like, hey, man, I got something from this clinic and just fire it off. And that's me, just like you said, students of the game. I find that kind of stuff fantastic because a lot of coaches where I'm at are very private and want to keep everything to themselves. So I have nothing but respect for coaches who are willing to sit down and do something like this, open up, share. Excuse me while I lose my voice. Apologies, everyone. So give me a little bit of a background before we start into running it back here. We were just briefly talking in the setup about Vermont being good for a long period of time. In my little bit of research setting this up, I think this was like a preseason tournament, sort of the Air Force Reserve tip-off, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
So take me through, you know, where you're at in the season and the history between the schools and the value of the game, all of that fun stuff, please.
Well, it's one of those. It was one of those preseason tournaments that you play in, that you want to test yourself against some good non-conference competition to lead into conference. Vermont has always been a good program. I've had familiarity with them over the last 20 years from my days at the University of Hartford when they were in the America East together. And just the lineage of players and the history that comes with that program. So when, the schedule came out for the 1920 season, for us, to be honest with you, that was like our make or break year. The group that we had, they were seniors, and they had done everything except gotten to the NCAA tournament. We had in that class, it was 6 guys. Out of those 6, 4 of them were 1,000-point scorers.
Wow.
One was the all-time assist leader. Another one was the all-time steals leader. And it was just a lot. There's a lot riding on that season, with them being seniors, and they kind of knew that. But the only way to get better is you got to go play against the best. And Vermont, they were kind of in the same boat as us at that time. I think going into that game, they were 5-1, if I'm not mistaken. Their only loss was to Virginia, who I believe the year before won the national championship. and they had beaten St. John's a week prior. So it was a good test for us. But prior to that game, we had to play Columbia the night before. We played Columbia, and I believe Vermont played Central Connecticut State. So it was one of those games, like, you look at the schedule and you try not to look ahead, but you know, if you can get through the first night, you've got a big battle on your hands. And
Right.
you know, that first night against Columbia, we kind of took care of business early, and really locked in on that game against Vermont for the championship. Now, for me personally, you don't know how those games are going to go as a coach, right? You don't
Right.
know if your guys are ready. You've done everything that you think you can do to prepare them, but you know, it's different when you're on that sideline as opposed to being on the court playing. And Vermont was good. You know, Anthony Lamb was a pro. I believe he played on the Houston Rockets this past year. Steph Smith, you know, was a very good player. I think he's now at St. John's as a grad transfer. Then they had Daniel Giddens, who's a McDonald's All-American, bounced around a little bit, but he was at the center position. And then just great role guys that knew their game, knew their role, didn't do anything outside of what it is that they could do. And you know, I think Vermont may have ended that year like with a 26-7 record. So, you know, if you know the history of Vermont basketball, you knew why, you know, this was a important game and a good test for us at that time.
I love it. And thank you for such a, like, I feel like I'm there. It was a great detailed answer. I appreciate the putting us in the moment. So as you mentioned, you guys played Columbia the night before. You actually played 4 games throughout that week, right? You had Arizona State, Massachusetts, Columbia, and then Vermont was last in the championship. So talk to me a little bit about what the scouting and preparation process looks like as a coach. You like you did mention, you do all you can to prepare your guys, but you got a 1 day turnaround. You're playing the night before. When do you start the scout? What goes into this scout? How is this scout delivered? You know, take us through that process, please.
Right. So the way we did scouts at Ryder, as the assistant coaches, we kind of split up the scouts at the beginning of the year. So, you know, you got 30 games, so everybody has 10. And
Right.
for me, I always took that as a challenge. You know, when I first got into coaching, I was probably more known as a recruiter. And to a certain degree, I took offense to that.
Right.
Um, you know, so I
I
really,
still do personally. Like, I mean, we had conversations last night
yeah,
during the draft, but I mean, obviously there are stereotypes and connotations that are associated with that, right? It's like, I'm a
sure,
basketball coach.
sure,
I'm not one thing. I'm trying to be many things. So
sure, sure,
understand where you're coming from for sure.
sure. So, you know, when the schedule came out, you know, you start looking at what what can possibly happen, right? So I think before that, a week before that, I want to say around the 17th, we played Arizona State, and I had that scout. And at the time, you know, our good friend Rasheen Davis, he was at Arizona State. So it was one of
Right.
those where I kind of wanted to beat him as well, just, you know, friendly competition. And man, they beat the crap out of us that day. So I say that to you ask, when did I start preparing for Vermont? Right after that game against Arizona State. Uh,
Right.
you know, flying back home, it's not a lot that needs to be said on the plane. Not a lot that needs to be said on the bus.
Right.
So I started preparing for about a week, and with those tournament games, it's tough because you can put a scout together, and you might not even play that team. You know, because
Yeah.
everything is tournament based, so you don't know. And you know, when you put all that work into it, sometimes you can feel a certain kind of way, right? That I did this and we didn't play them, and you know, you kind of throw your papers up in the air or whatever the case may be. But so I'd say it took me about a week to start it and really like pay attention to what it was that I wanted to focus on to prepare us for this game. And, like I said, with Vermont, they were such a good team. Like John Becker does a good job with that team. They've got a great staff, and Ryan Schneider, Kyle Kaplicki, and Hamlet Tibbs was there at the time. I think he's at Albany now, and just the players that they have.
Right.
It's like a well-oiled machine over there, man. It just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. So, I really paid attention to, obviously stopping Anthony Lamb was the biggest thing.
Right.
And for good reason. I mean, he was player of the year, I think 2 times back to back in that conference. There's a reason why he's in the NBA now, and really focusing in on him. But the role guys, it was more so trying to figure out how do you limit the role guys, or just put them in uneasy situations. So that was kind of the game plan. Probably watched about 5 of their games.
Okay.
And then
So
obviously, yeah,
let me
but
jump in real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, MG. When you're saying you're watching 5 of their games and it's this early in the season and you have not played them this season, what games would you be focusing in on? And do you actually watch games from the previous season as well?
Well, no, for that particular game, I didn't, because they had played, I think they had played 4 games by the time we were getting ready to play them. It was 4 games. And then actually the game the night before that, they played against Central Connecticut
Right.
State. Luckily we were the first game, so you could live scout a little bit. So in total, it was 5 games for me. And then obviously you call around teams in the conference and ask them, like, hey, their thoughts on your opponent, and just try to get a feel on beforehand on what it is you need to look for before you start watching tapes. So once I did that, like I said, I probably watched about 4 games. The one that was really important to me, that, like I said, they had some good wins earlier in the year. They beat a good St. Bonaventure team,
Right.
and St. John's. So you really focus on those 2 games and figure out, like, all right, what is it that kept them in those games? Now, obviously, if you look at it on paper, both St. John's and St. Bonaventure's are probably supposed to win those games. But like I said, Vermont is such a good team that you really wanted to see what they did against those 2 teams in particular to really get them over the top and get them to a win. And I thought the biggest thing that they had was confidence. That they went into those games knowing that they could win. And that's half the battle in the game of coaching, or in the game of basketball, or just sports and life in general, right? Knowing,
Right.
having that swag a little bit to say, okay, yeah, I don't care who you are, I can compete against you. And they definitely had that, and for right reasons, man. They've been good, like I said, the last 20 years. So just going back to what you were asking, it was all games from this year, and really just focusing in on the things they did well, which was a lot of things.
So let's talk about what goes in your actual scout. You mentioned you're watching a 4 out. You mentioned obviously the personnel and their confidence are very, very important. What is the report that you generate, or the film that you generate? What does that look like? And
Okay.
then who gets that? So like, do you deliver it to the rest of your staff first, and then it gets modified before it goes to your guys? Or does it just go straight to your guys? Do they get paper and film? Do they get just one of the two? Like, let me know sort of what your process is.
Well, the way we did things at Ryder is, we would do, in a normal situation, you're probably doing film 3 days before the
Right.
games, 3 days before. This one was such a quick turnaround that everything was done the night after we played Columbia, or after Vermont won their game. We went back to, we stayed at the Mohegan Sun Hotel. So we all, as a coaching staff, we all stayed in the ballroom and watched. And pretty much what we were watching was everything that I had put together. from my edit to the scouting report, and really breaking down. It really, you know, ends up on the assistant coach's plate with what it is the game plan will be, because it's such a quick turnaround. And I
Right.
think that's where Coach Baggett was great with us as assistants, that he trusted us with whatever the game plan was that we thought of. He went with it. And if he had to change something on the fly, he would. And, you know, as an assistant, that's what you want, for the head guy or head woman to just have the ultimate confidence in you to prepare the team for battle.
Yeah.
And I take pride in that, because, like I said, when I first started out, everybody thought I was just this recruiter. But no, like, I can sit down and coach and put a game plan together and put a scout together, and, you know, articulate to our players what it is we're going to do. So you start off with the film. For me, I like to do clips of, I go individuals and who on our team is going to guard which player.
Right.
And then from there, I go into my sets, and you try not to overwhelm your guys with too much film, because, you know, if you overload them, they're going to forget stuff anyway. So my clips would be, for the players, it'd be 2 clips per player. And then the sets, I take the main sets, the main 6 or 7 sets, and you know, show that, you know, if there's a tweak to it, maybe you talk about it. And then from there, you know, I have my scout ready to go. And you hand that out to them usually the day before, but being that we were in that tournament, it was the day of. And you know, just lead them the best way you can in such a short turnaround. And I think we did a good job of that.
Take me through what was on the actual scout a little bit here, if you can remember. I know we're going back a little bit, but
Mhm.
you did sort of, I mean, going general to specific. I mean, you did mention there's sets in there. You did mention you give the matchups early, but you know, like, what were the actual keys you would say to beat these guys from your perspective?
It was a few things. So obviously, you know, like I said earlier, you know, the main thing was stopping Anthony Lamb, who was their best player. Uh, you know, great score, had a good size, about 6'7", 6'8", 220 pounds. You know, could make a shot from the perimeter, could play on the inside, could face up. So, you know, stopping him was probably the main key. But something that I saw in person that I didn't see on film was, if we went at him, you know, he didn't like that. You know,
Interesting.
on a defensive end, you know, if you went at him, he kind of backed off a little bit. And that's not to take anything away from him, because he's such a good player.
Right.
But, you know, that was one of the things that I noticed the night before in person. But the biggest thing was making their other players beat us. And you knew Lamb would get his 18 to 20 points. But if we could make the other guys, pretty much everything was predicated off driving kicks, you know,
Right.
getting into the paint, and, you know, if the defense collapse in, kick out for shots. So we kind of went with the opposite. When their guys drove, we didn't collapse in. We stayed on our guys, and it was like, hey, make shots over you.
Right.
And you know, you take that gamble, not knowing if it'll work, but if you have confidence in it, it will. So when I told that to Coach Baggett, I still remember he gave me like a quizzical look, like, "Oh,
You
sure
sure?
you want to do this?" And I said, "Yo, trust me, that let's make guys like Steph Smith, you know, Robin Duncan, trying to remember who else was on their team at the time. There was another Duncan brother, you know, make those guys make plays over us. And if they can, we tip our hats off to them. But, you know, they weren't used to that. Those guys were not, they were used to, like I said, driving and kicking and, you know, creating those advantages off downhill drives. And once we started sticking to our guys, it put them in a situation that they weren't used to. And, I think we saw that more so in the second half. First half, I believe we got down 12 at halftime, which for us that was the norm. It seemed like, we would be down a little bit and then somehow, man, like the light switch just clicked and we would start rolling. Don't ask me why. I guess, when the seniors.
But MG, I do want to ask you why. I want to know. That's one of the things that I actually ask, and forgive me for jumping in there. But like, as an assistant, you did mention like you're down 41-29, and this is a point of the game that I like to ask a lot. We've talked a lot about the preparation, in-game stuff. What are you doing as an assistant? And then when scenarios like that present themselves where you're down, but you as a coach still feel like you're very much in the game, how are you conveying that to your guys to keep them, up and like, hey, we got a whole other 20 minutes of basketball to play? What's like the reinforcement that you're giving at that point there?
I'm gonna tell you what's crazy, man. Like that year, we had a young man on our team by the name of Willie Nunez, and Willie kept everybody in check. He was a grad transfer. That during that whole year, if there was a time in practice when it wasn't going well, he would come up to us and as a staff, we had that relationship with the players where he would come up to us and say, "Hey, coach, we need a timeout." And what that meant was we would all come to half court and huddle up and, some things were said. I won't say it on here what was said, but what was so great about that is when he would say we need a timeout, the coaching staff would walk into the huddle as well, but he would say, "Nah, you guys stay back. I got it." So that was huge. And during games, if there was a call that coach may not have liked or a call that one of the guys may not have liked, he would be the guy right there, whether he was on the bench or in the game, just saying, "Hey, relax." And I think the guys bought into him because he didn't have an ulterior motive. He didn't care if he scored 2 points. He didn't care if he scored 12 points. As long as we won, he was fine with that. So, you can imagine you're sitting there as a coaching staff and you kind of know all of the actions that the opponent is going to run. And that's not working. And you're trying to figure out like, okay, what can you say to turn this around? And Willie would just look at us, "Coach, we're good. I got it." And that's what was said at halftime.
Right.
And we had been in those games before, championship games for tournaments, MT tournaments and things of that nature, where it was just like, okay, we took their punch. Now let's go give them ours. And that's what happened in that game.
Love it. In terms of like your style of play and your identity, did you find, well, like in this particular season, in this particular matchup, did coach deviate from who you guys were ever, or did you feel that you always wanted to play, a certain tempo, a certain screen coverage, or did you guys change from game to game based upon who your opponents were?
No, we kind of kept everything the same, especially on the defensive end. Guys knew that we were either hedging on the ball screen or blitzing on the ball screen. The only time we really deviated away from that was if the guard couldn't shoot and
Right.
go under on a ball screen. And if he made a couple shots, then we'd adjust. But, for the most part, we kept it pretty simple. You didn't want to change things on the defensive end. That was our staple, defense and toughness. And then on the offensive end, one, we had a great point guard in Stevie Jordan. I tell everybody this, he's probably the smartest kid I've ever coached as far as knowing the game of basketball. But then also at the same time, on the offensive side, we had 5 guys that could go get 20 at any point in time. So you can't prepare. It's hard to prepare for that. On the scouting report, maybe you have 1 or 2 guys that you say, okay, they can go off. We had legitimately 5 guys that could go score 20. And I think the year before with this same team, I think minus one guy, I think we were the only team in the country that had at least one player score double-digit points all year. So out of our 13 guys, they all scored 10 points in one game at some
Wow.
point.
That's a nice one to have.
Yeah,
Those are good problems to solve, right?
yeah, yeah,
We got
yeah,
too many guys that can score the ball. What do we do here?
yeah, yeah. So, you know, you combine those two things and, you know, it's a recipe for success. You know, and like I said, at that point, all those guys were seniors. They knew that this was the last go round, that, hey, we really got to figure this out. And, you know, I've told you plenty of times, told some of the people on here plenty of times, if COVID doesn't happen, I really do believe we play in the NCAA tournament. Um, you know, I'm going to stand firm on that. You never look back, but every once in a while, I always say, you know, what if we didn't get shut down?
Yeah, the COVID year, I mean, I didn't play,
Mhm.
and we were completely shut down, and now we're still trying to work things out, obviously, but it tremendously tough on so many people, like, not just obviously because of this horrible virus that's out there, et cetera, causing the terrible disease, but like just on so many young people who this has been their dream for so many years of their life, right? And now they've got these extra external challenges to deal with, for sure, difficult. And I mean, coaches as well, you and I, right? Like we enjoy our success just the same way that they do. So
Very true.
definitely difficult. Let's talk a little bit about how many you guys played, and what you as a coach are tracking in game. And are you managing those rotations for your scout, or is it always coming from your head coach type deal?
Well, for us, we always wanted to play 10 guys. You know, so with that, we'd like to speed up the pace of the game.
Right,
And our thing was, you know, more times than not, most teams only play about 7, maybe 8 guys.
right,
So we would rotate 10 guys, and it was like, hey, play as hard as you can, raise your hand, the next guy will come in, he plays as hard as he can, he raises his hand, next guy will come in, and you know, we just rotated it that way. And we've had that luxury my entire time at Ryder. For 6 years, it was always 10 guys that were playing. They probably couldn't score the ball as well, but you know, with that last group that we had, it was so much firepower on the offensive end that, you know, we probably could have started out of the 10 guys. It was 2 different starting lineups that you could have went with
interesting.
at any point in time. But, you know, you kind of want to keep a routine of guys know when it is they're about to come in, and, you know, they have this amount of window space to do what it is they need to do and move on, and we go from there.
Would you guys go as far as scripting those rotations, or is it kind of like a feel thing, like, hey, we put Marlon in a lot at the 6-minute mark, we're going to put him in at the 6-minute mark today again, just because it's kind of the routine?
No, there wasn't anything that was scripted. It was more just based off the feel of a game. And, you know, like you've got foul trouble, or if
Right,
guys aren't making a shot, you know, things of that nature. And if I'm not mistaken, from that game in particular, uh, I don't know if you saw it, but Demencio Vaughn, I think he guarded Anthony Lamb, you know, a certain way because he didn't want to get in foul trouble.
right.
And I'll go into this a little bit off tangent. It's just a funny story. This is just how.
Well, I love tangents, please let us.
So the night before, we play Columbia, and he's got a guard, Mike Smith, who ended up transferring from Columbia, was a starting point guard at Michigan, and he picks up his 4th foul with about 14 minutes to go in the second half.
Hmm.
For anybody, that would be the signal. The horn goes off. It's like, hey, you know, come on down, sit here. We'll put you back in with 5 minutes to go. He looks at Coach Baggett and says, Coach, I'm good. And we're like, no way. And he sends a sub to the table. Demencio looks at him, KB, I'm good. And that's the kind of relationship we all had as staff and players, right?
Right.
Uh, and Coach Baggett tells the young man that was about to sub in, like, hey, come sit down. Now, me and the other two assistants, we're looking at each other like, what the hell is this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's got to come out of this game. And I'm laughing because I'm thinking about it. Demencio plays this second half. I wouldn't encourage this, but this was just the kind of kid he was. Plays the second half with his hands behind his back and just and is moving his feet. And I'm talking lunging, pushing off without using his hands. Do you know he didn't foul out this game at all? We win by 2. So he goes into this game against Anthony Lamb, does the same exact thing. And at one point, the referee comes over to us. Hey, what's Vaughn's deal? And hey, he doesn't want to foul anybody tonight. And he guarded Anthony Lamb the same way, and we end up winning the game. Now afterwards, we're in the locker room like, hey, don't ever do that again. You know, I think it speaks about not only the talent that we had, but just the relationships that we had with those players, right? That you can put them in any situation and they were going to adapt. You know, for as much as we wanted to stay, you know, solid with what it was that we were doing, you know, it's the players program too, right? And you know, you trust them and with how they want to do things. And if it doesn't work, they got to understand that there's going to be some consequences and repercussions. But if it does work, hey, let's go with it.
It's interesting. So I'm happy you went on that tangent because I'm actually, as a coach, somebody who's big on 2 foul participation, 3 foul participation. Like I believe that the opportunity cost of bringing a player out of the game is greater than the potential that they foul out. So for me, a lot of the time I'll leave players in, and I've had players get in foul trouble. I've trusted them and they've made the wrong choice. But I think, again, like I said, it's better to have them on the floor throughout those minutes when you need them, as opposed to pulling them off. And maybe, I mean, I'm not in the same situation that you are. I don't have, 20 guys that can go get me 20 points type deal, but
Right.
some of the guys that I'm going to sub in for some of the guys that could potentially be in foul trouble, it's really not the same player at all. So, you have to take those risks at certain times. During the game, what are you tracking, and how does that contribute to what you guys are doing audible wise? Like, what's a value on the stat sheet, and what's a value of that you're tracking as an assistant?
Well, for me, one thing with it being my scout, like I prided myself on knowing what plays the team would run.
Right.
You know, and you can see that beforehand when they're crossing half court just by what the alignment is, and you start yelling that out, and that could be intimidating to opponents because you know exactly what it is they're doing. And like I said, that was something that I really, you know, took pride in knowing the opposition's sets. And then from there, we want to guard the 3-point line.
Right.
You know, 3-point field goal percentage was something that was huge for us, just with the way the game was going. We want to stop guys from the 3. And that kind of goes in conjunction with what I said, right, about making those guys make plays over you. They were so used to driving and kicking out for shots that it's like, hey, on the drives, as long as you stay between your man and the basket, everybody else stay home, and let's see what they do. And like I said, it ended up working out in our favor. But those were the 2 things we wanted to, you know, for me, knowing what it is that the team runs, and then stopping them at the 3-point line, guarding them at the 3-point line, and then not allowing no second chance points. Like I said, Anthony Lamb was a good player, and then they had Daniel Giddens as well, who was about 6'10", big dude. So you got to keep those guys off the glass and limit them to 1 possession. And then, you know, try to get the game in transition if we could. And I think we did that in the second half.
Yeah, I would agree. What are like? I guess it's a natural segue to ask. What are your team principles on rebounding? How many to the glass were you sending offensively? And did that change throughout the season based upon opponents, or were you always kind of like, we're four to the glass, one safety, or whatever it was that you guys were doing?
We would always go three to the glass and two back, just for defensive balance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, typically you want your 3.5 to go to the glass. And for us, our three-man was Demencio Vaughn, who was probably our toughest player. He's about 6'5", and he would go to the glass. But then we also had Frederick Scott, who was 6'8", and then Tyre Marshall, who was 6'8", and they would go to the glass. So it would always be three to the glass and two guys back. Now, depending on who shot it, if our point guard shot it or our two guard, then it's like, hey, one of the other guards in the three-man, you've got to be back, balance the floor, push the ball to a side, and then we load to the ball and then play out of there. If it's transitioning, it's a bad matchup for us, hey, you got to fight like hell, and then eventually we'll try to get back to what it is that we want to be as far as guarding who we need to guard. But, for us, it was always three to the glass, two back.
Love it. So my last question that I have, and if any of the other coaches that are in here have questions, please feel free to jump in. But my last question before I jump into a bit of film is in terms of, we always talk about hindsight is 2020. Is there anything that looking back now, you're like, I guess really it's a two-part question. I'm sorry, my brain's all over the place. Is there anything now that you're like, I omitted something, or I could have included something extra that would have helped us with this W, would have made it easier for us? And then the second half of the question is, did you typically, you had said you had 10 scouts through the year. Would you do anything that was like a post-game report that you would deliver to your guys or to your staff, just sort of looking back like, hey, we did this well, but if we had done this, we would have been even better. We should focus in on that later type deal?
Well, just to answer the first question, if there's anything, like I said earlier, right? Sometimes you can overload your guys
For
too
sure.
much. And not in this particular game, but I remember 2 years prior, and this still haunts me. I know we're talking about Vermont here.
No, to me, I think the big thing is the process, right? Like that's
Right.
what I love about this, because I think a lot of the questions that I ask are similar week to week, but the process is different for everybody. So
Yeah.
getting to hear what you do and what bothers you and haunts you helps us learn, right?
2 years prior, we played Providence, and that's one of those games where you're not expected to win. It's the guaranteed game,
Right.
so you kind of just want to get the check and hopefully nobody gets hurt.
Right.
Well, I I take pride in putting my scouts together, and I remember the day of the walkthrough. This is shoot around, and we walk through. We're going through the sets, and like I said, I pride myself on knowing my stuff, that when I do walkthroughs, I don't have paper in my hand. That's something that I learned from Coach John Dunn. His thing to me was, when you come out to do a scout and do a walkthrough, if you don't have paper in your hand, your players will know that you know what it is that you're talking about. So I always remembered that. Uh,
Interesting.
so there was one, we're going through the walkthrough, and we're rolling on the plays. And I'm like, hey, coach, let me just get one more. And he's like, Mar, I think we got it, man. Like, we don't want to overload these guys. And I said, okay, cool. So we are up by 2 with a minute and a half to go. And Providence ran this play. They ran it in the second half. Every time they ran, it was in the second half because it's in front of their bench. And it's like an elbow set where their best shooter has the ball at the top of the key. And he hits the right elbow, and it's a guard at the left elbow and a big on the left wing. They flare screen him for the best shooter. He comes off, and I see the play happening. And now we're playing at the Dunkin' Donuts Center, which probably seats about 7,000 people. It's about 7,000 people in the arena at that time.
Right.
I'm yelling what the play is. Nobody can freaking hear me because it's 7,000 people. It's a tight game there. The fans are excited. And Rodney Bullock, that was his name. I can still remember his name. 2 years later, I can still remember his name. Rodney Bullock, they run this play. Rodney Bullock hits this three. I stomped the floor so hard that the other two assistants look at me and like, yo, man, what's wrong? And it put them up one, and we were going to get the ball.
That was the one more.
And I'm just like, that's the freaking play I wanted to walk through this morning. And we didn't, that was the last one. And, so we end up losing the game probably by like 2 points. I'm like livid. So I go into the locker room, and coach can tell like I'm real like PO'd, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, Marlon, listen, that's, if you had to worry about that play, it wasn't in our cards to win this game, man. Like, don't beat yourself up over that. But you pride yourself on knowing what it is that teams are going to do. So, so just to answer your question, you can't give them everything, and you got to be able to accept that, hey, some things are going to happen that you can't really control. But shout out to the young man Bullock on that one.
Love it. Love
and,
it.
But and what was the
it could be a touchable offense, but shout out to him nonetheless.
No, we come in love. That's our new thing, man. We got August 2021. It's all about love, man.
I love it. I love it. And then just the second half of that question, sorry, was the post-game report. Are you doing anything to sort of like grade your own work, or like, hey, what did I miss out on that I could put in next time type deal? I understand what you're saying in terms of specific incidents where you see something that you missed out on, but do you do anything where it's like every time you go back and you sit down with your scout and say, I've missed something here, and create a report out of that? Or do you file it away and just look at it the next time it's of use?
You know what? I think we probably do more of that conference wise, when you play everybody twice. You go back, you look at, maybe I had Menelik Fernandez as a 3-point shooter, but in our game he didn't shoot it well, and that's no knock on you because I know you can shoot the three well, right? But maybe things of that nature, or you go back and, all right, maybe I gave this guy too much credit, or maybe I didn't give this guy enough credit. Okay, so how can I switch this up for the next time around? And those are the challenges that I like as a coach. Like, what is it that I didn't see in game one that I could see for game two to give us that edge? And it could be something as small as, hey, on the ball screen defense, the opposition's 4-man hedges, but when it's the 5-man in the ball screen, he drops. So let's get the 5-man setting this ball screen. So probably leading up to that game, we'll work on the guards coming off on the ball screen with our 5s for pull-up jump shots, knowing that the 5-man is going to keep dropping down. So you got to be able to make that consistently. So, maybe things like that you try to figure out.
Fun fact, MG, I'm deceptively quick for a fat guy, but the jump shot's broken at this point in life. So I'm a get in the paint and spray it out kind of guy, just as a fun fact. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. If not, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to get into some of the film from this game. I pulled, I think it was 12 or 13 clips from here. Are we good in terms of being able to see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
And film is smooth for you at that point?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me just get organized here. I apologize. Minimize this guy and minimize this guy. All right, so we are first play of the game is our first clip. As I mentioned, I'll go through all the clips 3 times. I'll let it play one time so everybody can see. For anybody who's listening to the podcast instead of watching, I'll fumble through a description, and then you take it away. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, what you would change, etc. type deal. Uh, so here's our first time through, and rebound and put back, and we got a score and one. So first play of the game, we come down to the offensive left slot. We make a wing pass, comes off of a mid ball screen, attacks the paint, sprays it out to the right side of the floor. We got a double reverse, an attempt drive. From there, gets kicked back out, and then we punch the ball to the post. Who attacks, uses a really nice attack to the center of the paint, drop step, reverse finish, own rebound, and then an and one finish over the top. So talk to me about these things first, and then give me a little insight afterwards. What are you trying to establish right away? How do you feel execution wise? And then talk to me a little bit about play after the play type stuff in terms of not getting what you want and then being able to play basketball, how you guys teach that.
Well, in that first play, we always wanted to get Fred Scott, number 13, going. He was probably our most talented player. But sometimes you had to light a fire under him. So the best way to light that fire was to get him going early. And then, like I said earlier in our conversation, we wanted to go at Anthony Lamb first. And just to see how he reacted to that, because he was such a good offensive player that on the defensive end, we felt if we could, take him out of his game a little bit on that side, it would help us on the offensive end. So if you see here, the first look, now that whole side is cleared out. And it's like, now, Fred, you either have a closeout drive or a shot. And now Fred Scott in our league was a mismatch problem because he was 6'8", 225.
Right.
You don't really see that, in our conference with a guy that can put the ball on the floor. And he was very good at getting us a bucket on this particular play here. It was a strong drive and, go back and get your rebound and one. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, that year, Fred may have averaged about 13 points, 7 rebounds for us. And a lot of his rebounds came like that. We often had a joke. We thought that he was padding his stats to miss shots on purpose and go get them. So that's what you're seeing here, to go at Anthony Lamb.
And from the first time that he catches on the wing, faced with the shot drive option, doesn't get anything out. When he throws out and then reposts, are these part of your principles for, hey, we didn't get what we want, let's just play type deal? Throw it out, get a position. Is this something you would work on a lot in terms of reestablishing, getting the ball deeper, not getting something that you want out of the first time?
No, it wasn't anything along those lines. But, like I said, right now, aside from the young man with the ball, Christian Inch, who was a freshman for us, you got 4 guys on the floor that all scored 1,000 points. They had all scored 1,000 points by that point of this game. And this is early on in the game. So it was, hey, you have offensive confidence we'll give you offensive confidence to do whatever it is you want. And that was always our thing. You guys can have the offensive end. We've got the defensive end. And if you do what you need to do on that side, we'll give you free reign to do what it is within the concept of the team,
right,
to score your points. So that's what you're seeing here.
Love it. I guess a good segue to talk about the defensive end. We're about 4 minutes into the game, and you guys had altered between man and zone at this point. So my questions were kind of, obviously this isn't a great result. I threw this one in because I'd like to hear how you like to fix it. But talk to me about the decisions of when you guys decide to switch into zone, and why you would do it, and if it's planned ahead or if it's a feel type thing. And then obviously, for anybody who's listening, basically we just got wing and point passing back and forth. They put it into the short corner, and the gentleman who rotates bites on the fake, and they get a dunk shot because the low man doesn't rotate over. But talk to me about how you fix it and what you see rotation wise, and all of the decisions in terms of why and when.
Well, for us, and you're letting it play here on side out of bounds and baseline out of bounds, we always went zone. That was something that they were doing before I got here, and it's something that's been effective. So if you look at it, it's really a 2-3 zone,
Right.
but it looks like a 1-3-1 to start off. So there's a guy in the high post and two guys on the wing, and then you got your bottom guy, your 5-man. So the way our zone was, everything is done through the 5-man because he can see everything. So he's talking. So on that first pass, if you bring it back from the top of the key to the wing, we're initially not supposed to bump the first pass. So it looks like 1-3-1. But we end up bumping this here. As you can see, that's Christian Inge at the free throw line, that he bumps Willie Nunez down. And one of the rules that we have is when that ball goes to the short corner, that's on Willie Nunez, number 11, who's guarding the ball, and Tyre Marshall, number 20, who's got his right foot in that circle. They've got to go trap that. And then we rotate. So it should be a trap with the two bottom guys there, number 20 and number 11. And as they trap that, we will have number 13, Fred Scott, who's on the opposite block. He should take the cover down guy, who is number 43 or 35, excuse me. And then we rotate. So we don't get the trap, no communication. That's why we give up the 2 points. And if you can look on the sideline, Coach Baggett isn't happy.
He's not pleased with the result for sure. And for the sideline, baseline, out of bounds, always being in the zone, did you guys ever throw in any sort of like zone to matchup, or were you not concerned about it being scouted that like on an end out or a side out, this is what we always do type deal?
No, as time went on, and obviously you got an older team, you start to try new things. And so we would do things in the preseason. We would, throw out different things, like you throw things to the wall and see what sticks, and you use whatever it is you think is effective. But for the most part, we stayed zoned because you figure teams have so many plays, whether it's baseline out of bounds or sideline out of bounds. If you play zone, a lot of people aren't used to that. So playing it that way, it takes them out of their rhythm. But then as time went on, we would go from this zone and then we would yell 5. So our zone call was 3. It was called 3 defense. And when we wanted to go man, we would just yell 5. So if we'd say, hey, we're going to go 35 on the second pass, and that's going from our zone to our man-to-man defense on the second pass. Or we'd call it 31, which is the same thing, but instead of going on the second pass, we're going on the first pass.
Like it. I got one more question about this, and this kind of ties into, there's a couple more zone clips that I have a little bit later, one for you guys offensively, and I think one more defensively. But you mentioned you guys did trap the short corner. I'm kind of curious about your philosophy about when they were actually able to get the ball into the nail, what you guys would be doing there with your 2-3. And the reason that I asked this, let me preface it a little bit before you give your answer, is that I've had many a discussion about how dangerous of a shot that actually is for a big at 15 feet shooting a little jump shot, in terms of how much they're guarding them versus letting them shoot that shot. Like, it's not really a high percentage shot for that player at that distance type deal. So I'm kind of curious as to what your team philosophy was in terms of taking away that jump shot at the nail.
Yeah, so if you bring it back to when it gets to the short corner, and then just pause it, I can go through it. So yeah, once it gets right there, now what ends up happening is the guy in the short corner, Giddens for Vermont, now he sees, he has 35 right around that nail elbow area, but he also sees 23, who's there, 0. And if you look at their spacing, it kind of plays into our hands, right? So now what we'll end up giving up is, if somehow this pass makes it from that short corner to number 0 on the right wing, we should be able to get there in time on the flight of the pass. If it's a good trap, we should be able to get a deflection. Or if it does get there, it's got to be a hang time pass that we can still get there on the flight of the ball. And then everybody still stays, in their area. But for 35 to make that shot, it's going to be a little tough because, like I said, 23 is there. That's Stevie Jordan. He's the all-time steals leader at Ryder. Quick hands that he could read a play. But then also Fred Scott, like I said earlier, is on that right block. He can probably take another step over or 2 steps over to be inside the paint, and we'd be somewhat matched up that once that ball gets swung, we can get out of our rotations and still be in our zone. And we just bump Fred down if the ball ended up getting swung to number 0 on the right wing.
Right. Like it. Next one is an easy one. I ask it every week. So they miss similar type situation against your zone. They missed the dunk. You guys bust out in transition, and it's I think 1 pass jump shot. So transition threes without being married to the result of hitting it, of course. Yay or nay on Ryder for the transition 3? And if yes, what do you have to do to be able to be established to shoot it?
Well, if you bring it back, I'll actually tell you what opens this up. If you look at, you can even bring it back from when the young man misses the dunk. If you look at number 10 at Jerry Johnson, look at how hard he runs from rim to rim. So we would always talk about giving up yourself.
Right.
So him running the floor
Yep.
really opens up this 3-point shot. And like I said, for as good of a scorer as Stevie Jordan was, he was an even better passer. I think in 4 years, he's at over 500 assists. So he was always looking for guys in transition or whatever the case may be. And now it's just knowing your team. Willie Nunez was, aside from being our timeout guy to keep everybody in check, he was our 3-point shooter. At JUCO, he shot a high percentage from 3. At FIU, he shot in the high 30s, and for us, he kind of did the same. So that's all you're seeing there. Just transition. What I would have liked was maybe Stevie gets the ball to the middle of the floor, and Fred Scott's ahead in that left corner. Maybe he cuts through, but right now we're at an advantage. So right now, if Willie doesn't have that shot, he could even pass it to Fred for one more in the corner. So we're at an advantage here playing 2-on-1 with those 2 guys.
Like it. And anybody in transition is okay to be able to shoot that? You mentioned, obviously, you had a lot of guys who could score the ball, but you guys were okay with anybody being able to have the green light, so to speak?
No, you got to stay within your role. And so guys know who can shoot that. Willie Nunez could shoot it. Frederick Scott, he could shoot it. I think Alan Powell was in the game as well. He was a freshman for us at the time. He's in that right slot. And after that was it. Everybody else ran their lanes to try and get layups.
Did you, transition question, not really associated, did you guys always have players run the same side of the floor, or was it always based upon where you were when the defensive rebound was grabbed?
Yeah, it was just a matter of where you were when the defense got the rebound. And then, like I said, if it was 2 guys on the side running the same lane in addition to the ball handler, we'd always tell the bottom guy, go through. And all that meant was go through the baseline so we can balance the floor.
Perfect. We've got, this is a beating the zone with penetration type deal. So, I mean, they're playing kind of a 1-2-2-2-3 morphing in between type deal, where their wings are up high. And then you get several rotations, you post the ball, and then end up just beating it straight down, makes a really hard acrobatic shot. But I'm wondering sort of what your principles were for beating zones with penetration, when you're allowed to go, what the read is in terms of who you're looking at, all that stuff in terms of how you would be looking to beat this zone.
Well, this particular play here, we call this flow. And pretty much all it was, it really turns, it's a four round one,
Right.
but it ends up turning into a 1-3-1. And all that is when the ball is reversed, the guy that's the opposite wing has got to cut in to the paint. And so we end up, so now the ball gets swung. And Stevie Jordan, if you bring it back a little bit, he was, when that ball is on the left wing, yeah, you can play it from there. So if you notice, Stevie passes and cuts through. We reverse it to Fred. Fred reverses it to Willie. Now Alan Powell creeps in, but as he's coming back out, that triggers Alan Powell's coming back out, that triggers Stevie to come to the high post. Now he ends up going short corner a little bit, which really opens things up for us because now Vermont's, all their guys are looking at the ball. And now you have the advantage that you want. So on Fred's catch, he can even swing this to Alan Powell, but he ends up driving it instead. So it's a couple things. Alan Powell's open on the wing. Jerry Johnson's open in the post, but, Fred Scott's a big time scorer for us. So this is where, hey, you have the offensive ability and we're giving you confidence to just drive it down that lane line for a bucket. And what would end up happening if Lamb brings that left foot over, maybe we have Alan Powell on a kick forth through.
Interesting. Yeah. I notice your big ends up popping on this drive. What are your penetration principles on drives? Is it always go opposite on a lane line drive, or would he sometimes move to short corner? Would he go ball side? How do you guys teach that? What are your principles on that?
Well, on that one, he's supposed to be opposite block because now on that drive, the 2-on-1 advantage would be Frederick driving the ball, and that's a Jerry that like kind of circles up. But if he drops down to that short corner, and he could even be on the inside of the Vermont player there on the right block, that could be a dump off for a dunk as well or a lay-in. But just a strong offensive move by Fred on
that. No kidding. I noticed, so moving on to the next clip, I noticed you guys ran a double drag against the zone, which I found interesting. I haven't seen that used very often. Looks like it works very well. Talk to me sort of about the principles for anybody who's listening. Basically, it's playing against the 2-3. They come down, they set a double drag. So the ball handler changes sides to the floor. They roll the second man and pop the first man of the double drag, but at the same time, the offensive right side of the floor, the corner man changes sides. So moving the tag, I guess you could say, if it was a man-to-man coverage. And then there is a point to wing pass and a one more to the corner, just like Marlon was talking about on the other transition 3. And you get an uncontested or lightly contested 3-point shot, which we don't end up making here. But I mean, I love the set overall. Talk to me about options. Talk to me about, running it. I love this against the zone. I'm probably going to steal this as an FYI.
No problem. Well, this was, we called it double high. And it's a couple things you can do out of it. So clearly we go into like a roll and pop action. At that point, Frederick Scott was leading us in scoring. So we just wanted to try and get him the ball as much as possible. That was number 13 for us that ends up rolling to the post. But what you can also do out of that is off that double high screen, they can set a stagger for number 2 that's in that left wing.
Right.
So different options. We end up going with the roll. Now, on that, as Stevie's driving it and Tyre Marshall pops out, we got Willie Nunez running the baseline, and they lose him a little bit. So that's a shot that we'll live with him taking. But also, I would say this, if you wanted a little bit on Willie's catch, if we're all on a string like we're supposed to be, as Willie's going baseline, Frederick Scott's on that right block. If he pulls in and seals that guy, that could be a pass for a layup and maybe an and one for us.
Right. Yeah, it looks like the guard kind of sits down and takes his legs out in front there. Yeah, I love it. This relates to my playing off the nail question. This is you guys offensively. They're still in a zone. This is the 4-minute mark in the first half. You guys are down 3. And then like nothing special offensively other than you get it into that high post area and he goes to work. Basically, is really what it comes down to. Pivots, looks, can't find anybody, and he goes to attack. So the reason I throw this in and how it ties into the question is, what do you guys feel the effectiveness of your 5 or sometimes your 4 is at this area, shooting, driving against the zone? Is it a high percentage shot for you, or is it one that you don't like and you're looking at moving the ball?
I'm laughing at this because that's actually our 5-man,
Right.
and that was just a 1-3-1, basic 1-3-1 alignment that we would prefer the 4-man to be up there,
Right.
whether it was 13 Fred Scott playing the 4 or Demencio Vaughn 14 playing that high post. But from here, it's just a simple, all right, we don't have anything. I have an advantage. Let me just go ahead and drive. Now, Tyre Marshall would always tell us that he used to be a guard, and every once in a while he would try to show off some guard skills. But this is one of those things where I touched on it earlier, man. You got right now 3 guys on the floor that all scored 1,000 points. So
coaching wise, you're good with this, basically. I mean,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
it's a high percentage shot for you. You want your big attacking from there.
yeah.
No problem, even if he shoots that short jump shot.
Well, for Tyre, no, that wasn't his game. And if you look at it, he was open up there for a while, but didn't shoot it. All right,
Right.
so there was a reason why. He knows that that's not his game, but putting the ball on the floor and then coming back to his left hand over his right shoulder, that was where he was best. Whether it was in the post or on a drive, you knew he was just always coming back over that right shoulder.
Love it. The next one is just some of your zone rotations. I think you guys get beat a little bit on this one, and I wanted to hear how you would correct it type deal. So I'll let it play the first time, and then I kind of hate how it goes from this zoomed in view to the wide angle in between, because I lose players a little bit. Yeah, okay, so I remember this clip now. Sorry. So for anybody who's listening, we're again in this sort of morphing between 2-3-1-3-1 look, and we've got the ball at the point. We've got some motion by them where they're moving guys similar to your set from the wing to the nail. The ball gets reversed, and then we end up offensive left slot, and we just get a diagonal pass to the right block that, he makes a great catch, puts it on the deck, little spin move, possibly gets away with the travel, spins through the double team and makes a really, really hard shot. So talk to me about, passing lanes, how you'd like to limit this pass, who is in the wrong in your opinion, all that kind of stuff.
I'm going to say this, the biggest thing I've noticed, if you pause it real quick, we've got 3 freshmen on the floor, 1 sophomore, and Stevie Jordan, who's our lone senior or experienced guy in the game. So, like I said, initially in our zone, it looks like a 1-3-1 and then morphs into a 2-3. So if you let it play, I can walk us through it here. So remember I said on that first pass, we don't bump. So everybody stayed the same. So we're good there. And I think what Vermont does, where they do a good job, is they overload that left side. So the ball's on that left slot. And I believe the young man that's on that left nick right there is going to end up popping out. Yeah, so he ends up stepping out. So now where that creates trouble is nobody's really guarding him. Where if we have a guy on the ball, and if it's at the top of the key, it's automatically a 1-3-1 look.
Right.
But you look at that ball's on that left slot. So actually this should be number 0, who's at the free throw line. He should be taking that guy that's at the nick. Stevie Jordan, who is on the left nick, should be guarding number 12.
Right.
And then Jerry Johnson, number 10, he should be the backline guy, seeing where 35 and white is. But a couple things. So we're not matched up the way we're supposed to be. But then there's also no ball pressure on the guard with the ball at the left slot that he gets
Right.
that ball over the top.
Right. I mean, it's quite the pass. It shouldn't get through, in my opinion, but like you said, the alignment is key. And then I think he probably gets away with a little bit of a shuffle in here when he puts it on the deck. But give him his credit. It's a hard shot for sure.
Yeah.
This one I put in the notes: play after the play breaks down type deal. So again, you get into that double high set that you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
You roll the first and pop the second. In this case, you clear out the new ball side corner, so the offensive left side, and then feints an attack, plays with it a little bit, punches the ball into the post, and then I was really interested, sort of, on what you guys do with the cutting off of the post entry. This is just a heads up cut, in my opinion, by number 14 there. But I like how Zero sort of stretches that man who's got both in that scenario, and then it gets kicked back out and thrown back in, and we go on the catch and kind of fumble it and end up hitting a hard shot on the second side. So talk to me about your playing principles when the play breaks down a little bit.
Well, I think when plays break down, it's such a luxury to have a point guard that knows the game, and that was Stevie Jordan for us. So clearly on this play, I think at this point we were coming back, and Tyre Marshall started rolling, started feeling good. So we wanted to establish him in the post. So they doubled down. He throws it away, and then just a tough shot by Stevie Jordan for us. But we had been playing with those guys, and they had all been battle tested. This is our starting lineup. The only guy that hadn't been battle tested by that time was number 0. But the rest of those guys had all played in 100 games. So they knew, if something breaks down, Stevie, it's on you to figure this out for us.
And then the cutting element when the ball is posted in, do you guys always cut from the same spot, or is this just a heads up play by number 14 and number 0 to sort of space out? Like you've got the pin down at the free throw line happening, but I like the cutting, and I'm always curious to know what like you guys' principles are in terms of where you cut from. What are the automatics, so to speak?
Well, on that particular play, that's just Demencio Vaughn trying to cut in and noticing that number 12 on Vermont isn't watching him.
Right.
And there were times that year that we made that pass for a layup, especially going to that left side, because Demencio Vaughn, number 14, was left-handed.
Right.
So that's just a read on his part, and then obviously Fred Scott at the free throw line screening in, with just them playing. And like I said, you want to give your players offensive confidence to go make plays, and there'll be some times where those plays don't work out, but you just got to keep believing in them so that they can believe in themselves to make plays.
Love it. And then the last reason why I pulled this is just the situation of it all. You guys had been down much of the game. We're about 7 minutes into the second half, and the score at the half had been 41-29. And if you guys notice, the score is tied here, 43-43. First time you take the lead in the second half, you go up 3 on this shot, and it really kind of stretched from here, in my opinion. Did you, as a coach, feel the momentum changing, so to speak? Did you kind of at all notice like, hey, I think we are starting to get in, or is it too early to call for you at this point?
If I remember correctly, it was still too early. I'm one of those guys that I don't feel anything is safe until that clock says 0, 0, 0.
Until it says 0. I hear you. I hear you. No, there's a lot of time left here, guys. Let's figure this out still. So I just moved into the end of game type stuff, and I pulled out when they fouled you and you guys went to the free throw line. I just went with the clips in between. So just wanted to walk through the last, say, 80 seconds of the game. This is a side out for them. You guys are up 9 at this point, and I believe this was ATO. I pulled all clips, so I didn't actually get to see the timeout or not. But I believe this was ATO. I'm wondering if A, you had to set, and B, what you think after the ball goes in type deal. For anybody who's watching, basically it's an inbound to the left slot. The inbounder cuts through. There's a wide pin down, and they hit a contested three. I mean, just simple action. But walk me through it, Marlon. Tell me what you're thinking, and did you have it? How do you think you played it?
No, well, you know what? That was one of those. So, like I told you, we normally played uh, zone, sideline, and baseline out of bounds. They had, figured that part out, so we decided to go man, and that's just a good play by them. And one of those things where I told you earlier, right? You try to make sure you have the scouting report down,
Right.
right? I think number 0, Steph Smith of Vermont, had only been shooting about 27% from three, and then he hits that one, and you're like, geez, because you know that,
Yeah. Stop this. You're
yeah,
not supposed to do that.
right. But it's one of those things. If we get that stop right there, they probably have to foul us, and then there's not enough time left in the game. So at this point, I'm a firm believer, and I would talk it out on the bench with our guys. Two stops and two scores wins the game for us at this particular point, in my opinion. So you start playing that game from here. Now, clearly, we didn't get the stop, and just a better shot by them.
Right. And then the next one is there was a tech that was involved. So you guys go up 67-60. I wrote in after the tech. I think the tech is after this. Yeah, so they there was a technical foul. Ryder went down, shot free throws, and now Vermont is coming back. They're down 7. It's under a minute. And just basically 2 go to the ball, and there's a cut from the offensive right slot, wide open layup at this point. I know you guys are down 7 and you don't want to foul. So was this okay to you? Basically, I mean, you don't want to give it up so early, so easily. But I mean, still within your game plan, still feeling okay. Give me your thoughts, basically, on what's going on here.
Nah, we weren't okay with that.
No, we're not okay.
But you know what? It's one of those, we should all be on a string. So
Right.
Lamb does crosses the ball over. Stevie Jordan actually does the right thing by stunting over, because if he kicks this ball to the wing, if that guy on Vermont stays on the wing, it's probably a shot from three, which we'll try to get out and contest. But he pinches on that drive by Lamb. It's a better job by the Vermont player to cut through to the basket. But then they do a good job against us here on that weak side. They exchange, and we don't communicate it correctly. We go up with the guy on the exchange instead of passing it off, and they just cut through for a layup. Good play by them, and with everything they did, weak side exchange and the cut, everything worked perfectly for them.
Would you guys be helping from the low man on the weak side of the
Yes.
floor? That's where your
Yes.
help would come from? Yeah.
Yep.
And do you typically stunt off of the ball side at all, or is your position your help, or do you hug in that corner, or is it scout specific?
No, well, in this particular case, now the game's on the line, right? So, one more possession, if you get a stop here and the rebound, you're shooting free throws. So, with that, I think for Vermont, that young man in the corner wasn't a 3-point shooter. So we can even be in some more, and
Right.
maybe take that charge, or, get a block call where the shot doesn't go up and you make them earn it
Right.
from the foul line. But, like I said, good play by them to cut off the wing and then exchange on the weak side.
Like it. And then, I mean, there were free throws in the other direction. So it's 69-62 for you guys. You're up 7, 46 seconds here. 1 second, sorry. And they come down and they try a quick one. So it's just a pass to the offensive right corner, and they heave, and it's pretty good contest. They miss. You guys get the rebound in there. Talk to me about your defense, and when you guys are shooting the free throw, are you giving instruction the whole time, and what does that instruction sound like?
Yeah, right now, we just want to be solid. So actually on this drive by Lamb, Tyre Marshall's in the right spot, on that right block with his right foot in the 1 foot in the passing lane.
Right.
And as that ball's moving, he's moving. So what we would we would practice this on righty drives, how the closeout should be. And Tyre does this perfectly. So on that right side, it's a closeout with that right hand up. So you bring that right hand up and you want to force him baseline. That was our thing at Ryder, force baseline. So
Okay.
if the ball was on the other side, it would be a closeout with the left hand. But he does a textbook perfect job here on that closeout, high hand contest. And another thing we would say, we never wanted to leave our feet to block a shot. That was our thing. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to lead the country in blocks. Just have a high hand and contest.
And who cares if you do, right? Like,
Right. Exactly.
like,
Exactly. And we end up getting the stop there.
yeah, it's a great contest. I like it. Stays down, gets right up in his face, closes to the body, and you guys end up doing a great job rebounding. So then the next one, you guys again had free throws after that miss. They fouled you, put you on the line. I think you went 1 of 2. So the game's an 8-point game now. Again, are you giving instruction while shooting the free throws, or have you guys worked this through and you're just kind of trusting your guys? And then I'll let this one run. Basically, you get a forced 3 and an offensive rebound and a second look where he makes a big shot, brings it to within 5 with 27 seconds left. Sort of walk me through all of this.
You know what? In contests, and we just don't come up with the rebound.
Right.
You got to be able to hit. We would do this thing called Nick's rebounding, and pretty much all that was just teaching guys when shots go up how to, hit a body and then go get the ball.
Right.
Clearly, Nick's rebounding didn't work here, and they end up getting the offensive rebound. Now it's just desperation. Another good closeout by Tyre Marshall, and Steph Smith hits another 3, and that 27% that I had on the scouting report is looking like 79% right now.
Right. Like, those bright lights change players, apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
So brings it to within 5 with 27 seconds left. What's your level of concern here? And what are you guys thinking are the teaching points or highlights that you need to implement? Basically, you guys end up with the ball on your own baseline and you're running a set to get it in type play. What are you telling your guys to calm them down, keep them in, and not be worried yourself?
Well, the biggest thing is we wanted the ball in Stevie Jordan's hands. As your point guard, you want him to make those decisions. So if you look at it, we sent Fred Scott long. He was our worst free throw shooter.
Okay.
So, we didn't want him to touch the ball. Demencio Vaughn, who's our inbounder, was probably our second best free throw shooter on the court at the time, in addition to Willie Nunez, number 11, who's on that the bottom of the little stagger screen that we set. So just to get the ball in, try to get it up the court, and if they foul, you got your 3 best foul shooters in number 14, Demencio Vaughn, number 23, Stevie Jordan curling off, and then number 11, Willie Nunez. All 3 of them are in your back court. And if one of those guys gets fouled, I'm taking my chances with them at the free throw line.
And would this be one that you practice end of game scenario in practice, or would this be one that was kind of drawn up on the fly here to just get it in?
This one was on the fly, just to get the ball in. And if you notice, they didn't have a guy guarding the inbounder.
Right.
So it was just, hey, get the ball in. If there's pressure, I think we had one more timeout left, or I'm not too sure. I believe we did. But if you had any issues, call the timeout. But if not, you could throw it back to 14, Vaughn, where he could go make free throws, or number 11, Nunez, that he can make free throws.
Love it. And that's basically it. They foul, you hit your 2 free throws, they get a layup on the other end, clock runs out. You guys win 72-67. I think it was a great game overall. Like you mentioned, they had been good for a long time, but you guys preparation showed for sure. Congrats on the win on that. If anybody has any,
watching it again, man.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. If anybody has any questions before I wind it down, please feel free. If not, I will wind it down there. And I want to take a second to just really give you a very sincere thank you for, spending your time with me. I really appreciate learning from you and getting to know you over this past year and listening to you, I got tremendous respect for all that you do, MG. I really do.
Thank you.
Sincerely, big thank you.
No, thank you, man. Thanks for having me. This was fun. Relived a lot of good memories and some not so good ones, Providence stuff. But like I said, I've been a fan of what it is you do, and having your past guests show their knowledge of the game, and I think that that's important. And then just helping one another get better, right? That's what it's all about. So
For
thank you
sure.
for having me, man.
No, it's been my pleasure, absolutely. And to all the coaches that hop on and all the people that listen in, I have nothing but tremendous respect for you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you continue to find value in it. Please tune in next week. MG, if you want to stick around for a little bit after the recording, sometimes people have questions afterwards. But thank you, everybody. And I'll see you next week with Run It Back. Appreciate you.